And welcome back to Pandemic Proofing Your Portfolio on the Wizards of the Large Street, where I'm talking to three of the next generation of Wizards of the Large Street. Rahul, I'll start with you in this round again. You have a unique style in which you've picked stocks. And one of the important components I understand is that your stocks should be all weatherproof. They should be able to handle a demon to a CV19. Isn't that right?
Yes, Ramesh ji. And yes, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, but the most important component is that you want good leadership that is battle tested, leadership that can handle the crisis. What is it that you look for your leadership in building your portfolio?
There are two particular characteristics that I look in a leader. Of course, intellect is a given. One part is a warrior-like attitude, an ability to say that every hurdle can be crossed. And the second thing is motivating the team. And here is an example of a leader motivating his team. I was talking to a leader a week ago, and he told me that out of his CSR activity, he chose the top 25 executives within his firm and told them that a certain percentage of the CSR can be given within the community that they live in. The kind of enthusiasm that the whole leadership had towards the company and the kind of steps they have taken, because they were able to become larger in the community because they were able to contribute and solve some of the challenges that their community faced, was tremendous. In terms of the warrior mindset, I have seen this during demonetization. I have seen this with smaller businesses that need to go to work every day to survive, is that they are faced with insurmountable challenges, but they just keep going on and on and on, because there is a certain insight and an attitude towards saying that we together will cross this hurdle again and again and again.
So now when you build this all-weather portfolio, like I call it, there is a lot of volatility. Some of your stocks are down 30, 40, 50% even in this current fall. Is the volatility the price you're paying for superior returns?
Yes, in some sense, I am paying the price of volatility because the stocks that I like also have, in some sense, asset inflation or FII purchases, because they are led by good leaders, they have a good business model, there is demonstrated track record in those companies. And whenever FIIs decide to exit a country, like what's happened during now and what happened during demonetization or IL&FS, we do have volatility. But the measure that we look at in terms of risk is not the volatility, but the time to recovery. And what we see is 1 year later, is our portfolio better off than the benchmarks that we track? And most often, including 2008, we have recovered much faster because of the leadership and the kind of data that they produce post the crisis.
Rahul, what kind of businesses in which sectors represent that kind of opportunity that you look for? All-weather stocks, good leadership, addressing a huge opportunity. Are there any particular sectors in which these businesses show up?
So instead of sectors, what we have done is quantify these measures of good leadership, good culture, and an attitude, because not to get a certain kind of bias. So what we found was a certain amount of volume growth, which means that the products of the company are relevant to its clients at the margin, and debt-free, which means they have pricing power, that internal accruals can take care of capex and working capital for the non-financials, volume growth across, but debt-free for the non-financials, are measures of a great management team and a good business model that we see. And if you look at it, Rameshji, sorry.
Yeah.
If you look at it, Rameshji, you look at any problem in the world that a company can face, and the early warning indicators are volume growth or debt or both.
Yeah. So would you be ruthless about it if a company, say this year, I guess you would forgive them, but if a year the sales growth is below 10%, you would be out of that company?
Yes, sir.
Rahul, are there any new opportunities throwing up because the world has shifted on its axis in terms of you spotting opportunities in companies? Are there any new businesses that you like or you think will do well in the next 10 years as opposed to the stocks you picked in the past?
Okay, so the sectors that I am definitely looking at right now is, Indian businesses driving consumption, and the second part is because of the China fiasco, countries or companies or sectors or leaders within India benefit from people wanting to divert China as a producer for the world.
Correct. So that would be like drug, pharma, specialty chemicals.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Rahul. Let me just ask Charandeep for his view. Charandeep, you're well known in the market. Your funds have performed very well. Your PMS has performed very well. For the CanSlim method, which was pioneered by William O'Neill, how has that method helped you in this crisis?
I tell you, there's as we were on your show a few years ago, Rameshji, and we talked about this in great detail. It was a very pleasurable, enjoyable show. Varun and I, my partner, Varun actually came up with this style about 10 years ago. And, we decided to start this fund called the Girick Multicap Growth Equity Strategy, which is inspired by William O'Neill and CanSlim. And, I think that this generally helps in public money management to stay ahead of the curve, in the sense that it has a very robust screening process, which starts with focusing on stocks of companies making 52-week highs. So whenever a stock of a company makes a 52-week high, and mind you, especially in a bear market, if we are in a bear market, especially in a bear market like the one that is today, you have companies making 52-week highs or stocks of companies making 52-week highs. It's a very telling sign for us to go and research these companies, right? So essentially, we go out, we're looking at the screen, and we wire up and gear up our research team to go out and essentially strip out the fundamentals, understand the business, understand its leadership with product or service, look at the governance and the management structure of the company, try to understand really what it does, how it makes money, how it's grown, how it's utilized capital, how it's deployed capital, how minority shareholder friendly it's been. So CanSlim covers a lot of these subjects. It asks you to look at stocks that are making highs, but then it asks you to go into the acceleration of earnings, the leadership of the company, its products and services. What you'll typically find is that companies that, or stocks of companies that in poor market conditions, especially like the one we are in, make early highs. There's very smart money in there. There's money that's ahead of the pack that's possibly rotating into some of these names. I will go back to 2008 to give you shining examples of how until 2008, during the bull market, you had several infrastructure and real estate companies, companies, I'll name a few like Unitech, Suzlon, these were even nifty names. They went up several times. They were like 100 baggers. When the markets collapsed and when they came back, you had a whole different set of winners that were fairly underowned, stocks that started making 52-week highs very early. Companies like the great Bajaj Finance, Titan, the jewelry manufacturer, some of the financials, and these companies continue to lead markets and create a lot of wealth for investors over the last 10 or 11 years. So what you've seen is massive moves after a bear market. And what we find is that this system works even more robustly in bear markets such as this. It helps you not just identify winners ahead of a curve, or at least it gives you a framework and a process to do that, both technically and fundamentally, but it also helps you stay out of trouble. So a very integral part of this method of money management is to actually have a method to get out of your losers or where you have made a mistake. So many times, your own ego or your biases will not let you sell a previous winner. Something you may have done very well in over the last decade. It may still be a great company, but it may not be a great investment for some time. And when you're managing public money, you may not have 10 years to hold on to it. Hindustan Lever did nothing from 2000 to 2009. You made no money in it, but then you made 10 times your money. Bajaj Finance did nothing from 1994 to I think maybe 2005 or 2010. It was a 16-year bear market. But after 2010 to 2015, it went up 100 times. And from 2015 to the recent top made in 2020, it went up a further 10 times. So I think it's very pertinent to mention this today, that in public money management, you are also fighting time. It's important you don't always have the benefit of 10 or 20 years that you may have in proprietary portfolios. You are time bound. The duration of your liabilities may be 3 to 5 years. And you have to have a framework, not just to pick winners. That's one easier part, according to me, but also robust risk management. Which
understood, Charandeep. Let me make a point for you. The CAN-SLIM system, the M stands for market direction. How do you gauge in a time like this if the market direction is a bull market or a bear market? How are you telling?
Okay, so since you brought this up, this is actually the most tricky part of the CAN-SLIM part, and the part that we pay possibly the least amount of attention to, because the way they look at it is extremely system driven, and the market moves in and out of uptrend and downtrend, and presently the market's in an uptrend. What we like to look at is the breadth of the market. We like to look at sectors that are leading the market, stocks that are leading the market. So we focus on the robustness and the breadth of the sectors and the stocks for our screening. If we have sectors and stock making life highs, making 52-week highs, especially in a bear market, we believe there's a lot of smart money in there that gets in early. And it's very wise at a time like this to actually go out, dig into the fundamentals, and really understand the business in order to benefit from a potential money-making opportunity over the years to come. And again, one more thing I must say, that this system is not like, oh, I press a button and get it done. There's a lot of trial and error involved. I mean, you will be wrong more than you are right. But it's important to get out when you're wrong, identify, have risk management, and to ride your winners.
Okay, Charandeep, a lot of us are very surprised these days to see the new high list, whether it's in American stocks or in Indian stocks. What are the new high lists telling you? What are the sectors that are rotating in favor? Where is the smart money going? Can you throw some light?
I think that so far, I feel it's early days, and you'll get this becoming deeper and broader. More than just new highs, I think it's important to look at relative strength. Stocks that have also fallen the least, right? Companies that are possibly have not fallen as much as the market, right? So arguably there's less sellers and more buyers there. There is some kind of strength, underlying strength and liquidity flowing into those companies. What I will tell you is what obviously most recently most people are talking about is healthcare, right? But I would like to tell people that when there is 10 out of 10 analysts I speak to today like healthcare, and they don't like financials, but healthcare started showing up on our screeners in 2018. Domestic healthcare companies started making highs back then, when pharma companies weren't really being talked about. It was a consensus bear call. It was a very low weightage in the index. And you had companies like Abbott, Astra, Sanofi, Ipca, Torrent Pharma, several names coming up on screeners and making life highs a couple of years ago. I mean, most people don't even know Abbott's probably the biggest winner in the Indian markets over the last 2 years. It's doubled. So the market's always telling you, it's up to you to have a framework, to listen to it, and to do the work, to do the research on the company and its fundamentals so that you can take advantage of that opportunity.
The Canceller method by Charandeep Singh, of course, has been very successful for him. We'll take a break, come back and chat with Manish as to what works for him on the Wizards of Dalal Street.
Unacademy is democratizing education.
How can academia and students overcome COVID-19's debilitating impact on education? Is e-learning the silver lining? To know more, watch Unacademy Unlocking Education at this time on CNBC TV 18.
Money Control Pro is a trailblazer in the world of premium financial services and has completed a remarkable achievement with a growing number of active users of over 1.5 lakhs in less than a year. Money Control Pro's hawk-eye precision in market research and the knack of accurately divining its movements helps its subscribers effortlessly accrue curated benefits in business and gain precious insights in guiding their finances to success. Foreseeing the coronavirus scare, Money Control Pro laid out an ingenious blueprint for restructuring your portfolio to profitability. With a team of adept professionals dedicated to bringing you the newest in the market, your finances are in safe hands. Subscribe to Money Control Pro for an enriching experience and accelerated success.
1 hour, that's all it takes to decode the markets and macros. 1 hour is what we use to give you stories of global significance. 1 hour is all you need to get insightful, in-depth and accurate information about everything that you need to know. Join me, Shireen Bhan, on India's most comprehensive and award-winning news show,
India Business Hour. At these times on CNBC TV 18 and CNBCTV18.com. Money Control Pro is a trailblazer in the world of premium financial services and has completed a remarkable achievement with a growing number of active users of over 1.5 lakhs in less than a year. Money Control Pro's hawk-eye precision in market research and the knack of accurately divining its movements helps its subscribers effortlessly accrue curated benefits in business and gain precious insights in guiding their finances to success. Foreseeing the coronavirus scare, Money Control Pro laid out an ingenious blueprint for restructuring your portfolio to profitability. With a team of adept professionals dedicated to bringing you the newest in the market, your finances are in safe hands. Subscribe to Money Control Pro for an enriching experience and accelerated success.
Anuj, what a choppy day in the market.
Surabhi, the market could have easily fallen a lot today.
It's a critical last 1 hour.
The leadership may well have already shifted to pharma names.
What we need is 2008 spirit, where unconventional steps were taken to bring sanity in market.
Find out what's driving the markets with actionable insights and opinions from market mavens. NSE Closing Bell at these times on CNBC TV 18 and CNBCTV18.com.
Brought to you by Fortune Chakki Fresh Atta, Soft Roti Ka Vada.
Up, down, small moves, big moves, predictable moves, surprising moves, game-changing moves. We'll tell you the market moves worth paying attention to. Trading Hour at these times on CNBC TV 18 and CNBCTV18.com.
And welcome back to Pandemic Proofing Your Portfolio on the Wizards of Dalal Street. I'm Ramesh Tamani. With me today, a trifecta of Generation Next of Dalal Street, Manish Bhandari of Vallum Capital, Rahul Rathi of Punartha Advisors, and Charandeep Singh of Girik Capital. Manish, it's your turn now. You've been worried before even the crisis hit us in February, March about equity valuations in general, and you were bullish on gold. Given the fall in the market, Are valuations more attractive? Are you more bullish now? And what is your view on gold?
Mr. Damani, price sometimes is just like a noise. So you have a market which is moving up by 10% in a week or 10 days. So it's really difficult for a value investor to really pick and say that today is a value and tomorrow is not a value. But gold is something which I've been advocating for some time, even our last investor letter as well as this investor letter, that if you look at from a top-down approach, the global monetary base has expanded at an unprecedented rate. And in that context, if you look at the gold versus the global monetary order, which used to be close to 4.6 trillion, and the global monetary order was significantly higher, and today close to 7 or 8 trillion. That's a total outstanding size of the gold to a global monetary order of close to 40 trillion or so. So I find a disconnect with that gold, an asset class, is highly underappreciated. And the noise surrounding equity usually take the sheen away from the gold. And from an Indian investor point of view, this gold becomes a very interesting hedge against the depreciation of rupee. So you are landed up in making 4 or 5% annual depreciation in rupee through the gold. So I would strongly advocate that if someone as an investor is underallocated on the gold, this may be the last train to buy some of it. So I would be significantly overweight. We played through buying the gold-linked loan companies, which gives a loan on the basis of the gold from last year onwards, and it played out to be a very interesting play for us in some time.
Manish, that's an interesting point, because Warren Buffett said, well, you can look at gold, you can fondle it perhaps, but it doesn't give you any dividends, the large transaction cost to hold it. But the point I want to argue with you is that, are you betting on yesterday's asset class? Are the more digital savvy consumers, the people who don't trust central banks, as you say, going to go to Bitcoin rather than gold?
Very interesting. Buffett did said about it that you keep a piece of gold on a table, it will remain the same, and the company would give you a dividend. Answer is yes. But I'm a strong advocate that gold should be given a Nobel Peace Prize to act as an arbiter in a situation where you have an unprecedented monetary disorder and dislocation. So what works in favor of gold today, if you have a zero interest rate in a global regime from an economy like the United States of America, then the holding cost of the gold goes down substantially. So and you have an interesting question that is the gold for the new generation, for the digital savvy consumer or not? So you have a two set of consumers in the world. One who would, one age who would own a gold, and the new set of consumer will own Bitcoin. So both these consumers are telling you that one want to own a gold and another want to own a Bitcoin. Answer is yes. So, but both asset class, gold has a history of a trust with the humanity for maybe 2,000 years or so. So it's not going to go away so fast. And gold peaked in 2012 and 13. Until now, we are below the 2013 peak, and the world has moved significantly during this time frame. So I would say
inflation hasn't moved, Manish. Inflation hasn't moved.
Pardon?
Inflation hasn't moved. I mean, gold has not moved because inflation hasn't moved. Normally, it's a hedge against inflation, right?
Yeah, you are right. You are right. The inflation has not moved, but so the cost of capital has gone down substantially. So earlier there used to be a cost of capital to store a gold and to own a gold. You would have earned a treasury, far better return in the US Treasury if I have to look at versus this. But let me remind you, Rameshji, this year, post the crisis, if I'm not wrong, there are only two asset classes which have done significantly well versus most of the financial assets. And relative to all the financial assets, one is gold and another is the US Treasury. So there are times when gold will do very well. If you have to stretch your imagination and have to see that how the gold would have done versus on a 20-year log scale or maybe a 30-year log scale, I'm sure it will beat most of the financial assets also significantly. So there is a strong case to own a gold or a gold-linked product if someone could definitely look at that.
All right, Manish, let me pull you back to equities. You clearly recommend equities that are impacted with gold or gold lending as a good example. Where else are you finding opportunities? Have values come down enough that you are finding values in other sectors? I always remember your great example of the 2008 when Airbnb was becoming mainstream, that you bought the linen companies of India. So that was a great play. Any such ideas that you can share with us?
Yeah, three sectors in a post-COVID world looks interesting to me. And one of them, to start with, the first one is the pharmaceutical industry. It's a $14.5 billion export-oriented industry. And after the post-COVID, one of the significant investment, if the world has to see, is going to happen in the medical and the medical services across the world, whether it is the developed world, or the emerging world, any part of the world. And India stands a very interesting chance and a significant chance with a competitive advantage to advocate the cause of the pharma industry. And we are leader and we are gaining enough traction. So I see a situation after 4 years of difficult times, the pharma industry will be a significantly beneficiary in this process, and where the export as well as the domestic market both are doing reasonably well. So we got invested last year in the pharmaceutical industry in the process. Another area which I look at it at this point of time, where there is no supply disruption or there is no demand destruction, and that's going to be a fundamental reason for anyone to evaluate a company at this point of time or industry at this point of time, looks to me is an agriculture. So if I have to look at the agriculture industry from the India perspective, then we have an interesting dynamics where the agriculture, where even if you talk about from the lockdown perspective, the agriculture has not seen so much of disruption. If I have to look at from the government's viewpoint, as well as from all the efforts they have made in last half a decade or so, is to correct the balance sheet and correct the situation at the agriculture side. So agriculture, and as well as agriculture as an industry is a big exporter out of India also. So you will have a situation where the food security is going to be of prime importance, and agriculture and the agriculture linkages within the India, and those companies are going to be a beneficiary. And the third one is going to be the rural spending. So I see the coming back of the rural India in a far better way versus the coming back of the urban India.
It's the urban versus rural divide that is true in America also, that rural sectors are Trump supporters, urban sectors are Democrats, and we're probably going to see a divide here too, you think. Let me ask this to all of you, but I'll start with you again, Manish, just to round it off. You have an investor base. What is the retail investor doing? Are they putting money? Are they withdrawing money? Are they panicking? What has been your experience with your retail base? Manish?
So yes, yeah. So you have a mixed reaction. The people who are joined the party for the first time, I mean to say people who are not less than a half a decade investor. So let's bifurcate investor between the people who have seen 2008 and who have seen a decade of investing. They are taking this far more calmly. Obviously, people do want to see their portfolios going up, but they are far more mentally suited and temperamentally suited to handle such kind of dislocations. People who have come in after a 7-8 year of bull run and who have joined the party in last 2 years or so, they definitely will come to a new reality that whether this is not a market where you can make money on an equity doesn't compound. On a log scale of 20 years, you do look at it compounding, but that compounding doesn't happen in a patches of 2 years or 3 years. Let me remind everyone and all the viewers, Damaniji, that in between, after the 2008 crisis, 2008 and 9 crisis, and after the normalization, the BSE index, Sensex, didn't move up for 4 years in a row. So if investor do look at investing in the Indian equity market with a very short horizon or a temperament, then they could be in a situation where they could be slightly in disappointing position. We have chosen our investors far more carefully.
Okay. Rahul, let me ask you the same question. You have a very widespread investor base, a very successful PMS scheme. How have investors reacted? Are they giving you more money? Are they withdrawing money? Are they calling you in panic?
I think all of the above, but if I look at the larger part of the base currently, they are a lot more interested in putting assets to work. And there are multiple reasons for them doing. The top three being as an asset class, they've seen a certain amount of recovery coming in because you can track it across the world. And with so much of money being pumped to, make this asset class as buoyant as possible is driving people. The second reason is that, we as a community have become more proactive in sharing our knowledge with clients. So these philosophies, the shows, especially that you do, help investors understand how to manage volatility through knowledge. And the third part is a large percentage of people today who have been invested in real estate and other asset classes have realized the liquidity benefits and the other benefits of holding equities as an asset class. And that has also been driving people towards this asset class. So overall, this month also, there have been more investors joining in, adding in money, asking questions, probing deeper, but at the same time staying put.
Rahul, I need to ask you this question because I know you've been bullish and you've been right, but does it sometimes at the back of your head worry you that the Dow topped out in 1968 at 1,000. It didn't get back to the 1,000 level till 1982, a period of 14 years. Our Sensex was at 4,592. It didn't cross it until, say, 2000 decisively. So we can go long periods without the index moving. Would that worry you?
So what you're talking about is a time correction, Ramesh ji. Means the classic thing about time correction or markets behaving irrationally. Right from the quantitative easing parameter, so during those times, you've actually seen asset inflation.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting thing. Asian Paints in 2007 was trading at 27 times earnings, or Nestle was trading at 36 times earnings, expensive even then. Which means that if they generated a cash of 100 rupees, you would buy that asset at 2,700 rupees.
Right.
Today, Asian Paints is trading at 62 times earnings, or maybe 72 now. Which means if it is generating 100 rupees, currently you're buying it at 7,200. Which means now I have two tailwinds in equities as an asset class. One is earnings momentum and other is asset inflation. As more and more money comes into the markets or into the hands of consumers through quantitative easing and things like that.
Rahul, I need to stop you. I need to get the last word from Charandeep. Charandeep, how do your investor base view this market?
So I think that the investor
just quickly,
base,
please.
Yeah, can you hear me? The investor base is far more mature than it was a decade ago. I think people in India are realizing the value of staying invested, number one. So people generally have more threshold for pain than they did in earlier cycles because you mature with cycles. And I think there's one more thing that people are learning, that manager selection is also important. So for example, if you look at the Franklin fiasco that happened recently, I think that, that scares people when you have so much money stuck all of a sudden. But hello, if you had been with, some of the, I wouldn't say better for the lack of the word, but probably guys who have a better framework or follow better processes, you wouldn't have had that problem, you can blame these crises on COVID because crises have come and gone. But I think manager selection in India is still at its infancy. How do you evaluate a manager? How do you actually figure out a guy is good for you or not?
Thank you, Charandeep. I understand the point you're all making. Stock selection, being sharp about your money, and riding out the bull market. Thank you so much for offering me your unique insights into what's going on in Dalal Street. There's a saying that the human body has its limitations, but the human spirit is boundless. Thank you so much for sharing all the spirit and energy that you bring to the stock market. And we'll see you again on another episode of the Wizards of Dalal Street. See you on the other side. Bye.